Hi, everybody. This is my first time in Berlin, and I have absolutely loved. I've been here for about 5 days, and this is a wonderful city. So thank you so much for having me here. I'm very excited to talk about something that I'm really passionate about. It has been a good portion of my life for the last year, and this is my first time talking about it on such a large stage. So I'm really excited both to share it with you all and to get your all's feedback. So what I'm going to be talking about is the journey from a design system to an interaction system, something that I think is necessary in the age of AI that we are currently in. So I've done a lot of traveling. Over the last, by the time that I get back to Seattle where I live, I'll have been in 10 cities over the last 8 weeks. It's been some pleasure. I went to a wedding in India, still got a little bit of henna that y'all probably can't see. It's vaguely there. I've been a bunch of different places, was in New York last week for UXDX New York, and like I said, now I'm here. And one of the things, I was sitting in an intersection in Kathmandu. I was on the back of a motorcycle, and I was watching the chaos of this intersection. There's no lines on the road. It is just complete. You have motorcycles, you have people walking, you have cars, you have tuk-tuks, you've got a little bit of everything. And I thought to myself, how is everybody not crashing? It looks a lot like this. This is a picture from Delhi, actually, but it's a very similar intersection. And I compared it back to my home city, which is Chicago, up here, and I was thinking to myself, I wonder if there really is many more traffic deaths in a place like Delhi compared to a place like Chicago. And the reality is there isn't. Even though this is what daily life looks like there, and this is what daily life looks like in Chicago, there actually is about the same amount of traffic deaths. And it's because they both run on systems. Delhi, Kathmandu, they run on implicit systems. There's no lines on the road, there's no real lights like you have in Chicago, but people know what to do. On the flip side, a place like Chicago, yes, people know what to do, but they run more on an explicit system. And it connected back to what I've been working on for the last year, which is design systems. And design systems are sets of rules that make doing work easier because people can follow those rules. And they are set with both implicit and explicit rules, as we're going to discuss. So why am I up here talking about design systems beyond intersections and travel? Well, it's because I was on a stage not too different than this in October. And I gave what I thought was going to be my pinnacle talk. It's about a book that I've written and about some of the other work that I did before the design system work. It was this perfect formula for how to develop AI features. And I spent 45 minutes going into depth about this. It was recorded if you all want to ever actually watch it. And I got done with it. I was talking to the audience, and I was asking them, what did you take away from this? And instead of talking about this framework, instead of talking about all of the things that I wanted to have people walk away with, the biggest thing that I heard was I left thinking, should I add AI to my feature? So simple. I was like, I could have just had that up on a slide and talked about that for 45 minutes if that's what people really needed to take away. And it really showed everyone is building AI. Not everybody's thinking about should they be building AI? Should they be adding that into their feature? And so I believe design systems, when done right, lay the rules to when you should develop AI features. And through this talk, I'm going to talk about the 3 steps that I've seen through this and some of the work that I've done with Microsoft, which is evolve, changing from design system to interaction system, align, getting that team to really focus on a few main questions and have that be a guiding light for how you go and create AI into your features, and then lead. Because if you do that correctly, you have the opportunity to become a strategic leader on the product team, whether that's a design system or someone who is just operating like a design system team. So let's start with lead. A little bit of history. So I started at Microsoft about 6 years ago, and I was on a team called Workplace Analytics. In that, I had an opportunity to build those frameworks that I was up there on that stage talking about and think about how to appropriately build technology in a way that it satisfies outcomes. After a few years of that, it launched. It became what's now called Microsoft Viva. And I saw that as a good opportunity to leave and go and write a book about some of the philosophy that I had learned through that. So I left, I did consulting, I worked with startups, and I wrote this book, Bridging Intention to Impact. While I was doing that, ChatGPT came out. And I was lucky to just have happened to study generative AI as part of some of the work that I did in my master's program. So when that happened, I knew that I had knowledge that I could build on in the work that I was doing. Wound up working on a team for a company called BetterUp, where we were deploying AI features across an entire product suite. And that history gave me the opportunity to ultimately come back to Microsoft at this pinnacle time for the company when they're heavily investing in the Copilot product. And what I learned very quickly coming back to Microsoft is that we have built a single brand, but it's really a collection of features. And that's not a Microsoft problem. That's an every enterprise problem right now for anybody building suites of AI features. They are branding them as singular products. Google Gemini, Salesforce Einstein, Microsoft Copilot, all of them are branded as single products, but they're really a collection of features that don't really talk to each other. And so one of the primary stakeholders that I found through this work was a team called Fluent. Now, Fluent is Microsoft's design system. And within Fluent, there is a team that is building out a Copilot version of Fluent. And so they are the systems team. They are the ones who can be this guiding light for AI and how you build AI into product. And so through that process, they became my core stakeholder, and I saw the opportunity as me as a researcher who is on a systems team. My entire domain is thinking about how to create a unified, singular Copilot experience. Well, the team that was one of the best matches for that ultimately became the design system team. So what is a design system? I had to ask myself that. I had heard about them, but again, my background is research. I've been a researcher my entire career. I've never really actually worked on a design system. I've just heard that they exist. Design systems are, again, you have things like, a Segment, which was one of the companies that I'd worked with. I love theirs. I think it's my favorite branding, actually. It's great colors. I love the typography. There's things like material design. If you've ever built an app, when I did, that was one of the best places to start. Material is a Google design system that is filled with a bunch of different components. It's entire Figma libraries, which you can utilize pre-built elements that are the launch pad for whatever you're developing. Similarly, for the B2B space, the SaaS space, Shopify has Polaris. These are all systems of pre-developed components that you as a designer are able to leverage in whatever you're building. And if you're at one of those companies, again, it is a library that's really more intended to be used because that's how you keep brand coherence. Now, the power of design system, I think this is an article or an image that I'm blanking on the author of, and I'm sorry to them for not being able to attribute it to it, but I love this Medium article that this individual wrote because it really simplifies what is a design system. Well, it creates efficiency, but it starts with having to bring in those components. It starts with giving you parameters in the beginning. It's those implicit and explicit rules. So yes, in the beginning, it might actually take a little bit longer to get things up and going because you have to learn the system before you can actually design the features. But in the long tail, if you design something right, it takes a little bit longer, but then your efficiencies explode because now you're using from a preset components to develop whatever you are actually creating. And so I saw, again, with my mandate of thinking about Copilot as a unified system, the design system being a great place to lay out those rules that then would allow our teams to go and build right the first time. Now, design systems have operated, they've been around for 15, 20 years, but they are facing a challenge. And that is that AI is a paradigm shift. Now, how far? That is for us to figure out going forward, really. Are we going to actually shift to full AI? We don't know. Are we going to only have conversations with bots? I personally don't think so, but there's great thinkers that do. What I do know is that there will be more of a conversational format going forward with whatever we ultimately create. So design systems, they have to adapt. One of these big questions is this: when do we create a chatbot versus when do we create an AI-enhanced feature? You may ask yourself, what is an AI-enhanced feature? You all have interacted with one if you've used Google or Gmail. Gmail, you have that button that says summarize this email. That is an AI-enhanced feature. It's utilizing the AI to be able to create that summary, but you don't have to prompt it. You just click a single button. So that is an AI-enhanced feature. And what's beautiful about that is it's extraordinarily easy to use. You click the button and it works. But you lose the flexibility because that button's not going to tell you how tall Mount Everest is. That button is not going to be able to draft an email. That button is only going to be able to summarize an email. Extraordinarily easy to use, not at all flexible. On the flip side, you have a ChatGPT or a Copilot or a Claude. Extraordinarily flexible, you can ask it any query, but not as easy to use because it's up to you to figure out what query you ultimately want. Foundational question to product development now, that a design system has a great opportunity to start to lay down the ground rules, explicit, implicit rules, to guide teams when to do what. There's a lot of these. All of these I've interacted with in some way. There is input. How much of the prompting do you do for that person? There is feedback and confirmation. These systems talk to people, well, like we talk to each other. And so there's different expectations when you're talking to something that's having a conversation with you. If I asked one of you a question, or better, one of you asked me a question after this, and I stood here for 30 seconds, and I blank stare at all of you, and then I gave you a response, you'd probably be like, what's wrong with this guy? Well, if an AI system does that, you're probably going to think it's broken, or what's wrong with the system? People expect it to talk to them. I'm thinking about this. If you've ever used o1 when it first came out, o1 from ChatGPT was one of the first to tell you what it was doing. It's, hey, I'm searching this. Hey, I heard your request. I'm doing this. Copilot does that really well now too. We confirm your request, and then we tell you what we're doing, and then the Copilot actually responds to you. It talks to you. So that would be an example of the latency. Error recovery, handoffs I'm going to talk about, but yeah, these are all examples of types of problems that they can actually work with as a design system can actually work with in this new age of AI. So the takeaway for the first Evolve is that in the past, design systems have played the primary role of design, of interfaces, of buttons, of layers, of components, and they still have that significant role. But now to really succeed going forward in this age of AI, to build good AI products, they have to think about how the system acts, how it behaves. And if you do that, it begins to break this trend that I have seen at Copilot and that the other people I work with in design system space or thinking of AI systems as a whole face, which is this retroactive support that is happening. Because a lot of companies right now are investing huge sums of money in their AI features. And what does that mean? It means that these teams feel very autonomous to run off and go and build a bunch of features. And they're encountering all the problems that we just talked about, those 8 that I called out, plus the many others. They are running into those problems, and yet they're just steamrolling right through them. And they're doing that because they just need to build something. They have pressure on them. They have KPIs to hit. They have OKRs to fulfill. So individual teams are saying, we'll just go and build a latency experience. We're not thinking that much about it, but we're just going to make people wait the best way we think. In other words, they're relying on product intuition, which as a researcher, whenever people are following product intuition, I get a little nervous because intuition can lead you great places. It can also lead you far astray. And so the pattern I constantly see is products design a feature scope. Design goes and creates a specific solution to it, again, making a lot of critical, high-level decisions about how they're integrating AI into their systems. And then the design system has to come in and retroactively clean up multiple different teams' works, creating a single pattern, and then having to go back to each of those teams and say, okay, now we've built the pattern. Can we please recreate this feature to fit that pattern? And yes, this is a way to get work done, but it's much better to lead. And leading requires first, as a design system, to align. And so I did that with the design system team. I conducted a research workshop with them to help them really pull out what could they become the strategic leaders of. So this started with creating a list of questions. I should say this started with having conversations with members of the team. This was internal stakeholder interviews. And also I have friends that work for Google, I have friends that work for Salesforce, and so I talked to them too about some of the things that they were facing, hearing the questions that their team was talking about as a design system. I created a big list of questions. What types of questions as a design system could we go out and actually answer? From there, I held a workshop. And really, in all honesty, it was like a 3-hour workshop. The first hour and a half was really just empathy. It was just sitting down and actually sharing, wow, a lot is changing right now. We are facing huge swaths of change. And as a design system, things really are feeling different because we're interacting with a new technology. And then the other hour and a half we got deep with those questions. We ranked them, we categorized them, we thought through them. What were the biggest problems that we saw as many features actually facing and trying to answer? And we prioritized those. And so we left with next steps of having these questions that we could go and begin to build different material to answer as a design system or as a systems team. So a couple examples of these questions, and I didn't categorize them, and I wanted to ultimately say this is that the reality is I would love to be up here on stage and tell you the answers to these questions, but these are just the questions that our team faced, and this workshop was 3 months ago too. We're still working through these questions and we're tackling this handoff question that I'll reference, and then also that bigger question of when to do a feature, when to do a chatbot. We're still at that level. These are other questions that came from this that I would love to tackle over the next year. Some of these are going to be relevant for your team, some are not. Instead of taking this list and saying these are the questions that systems should be worrying about, it's more about the process. It's more about this workshop that we went through that I highly recommend that every team that has a system in place reevaluate and consider what are these questions that they ultimately should answer as a group. On top of asking these questions, the systems team reorganized. And they reorganized around this new model to be able to more effectively deliver how they could approach creating a system for AI-enhanced features, choosing to have 2 teams that were built specifically around one on conversational AI and one on AI-enhanced features, because that is such a foundational question to everything we're building now, is how conversational do you make it? They approach that, and then now they also have a design language and more of a strategic team that's focused on the components themselves. So they still have the core elements of what was a design system and what is a design system today, and they've repositioned themselves to be able to grow with the product as it includes more artificial intelligence in it. So takeaway number 2, now is a great time to unplug and replug, and reconsider how you are approaching your design system, how you're approaching your system of your product overall, especially if you're including a whole bunch of new features or you're changing things because of a new tool. In this case, that new tool is very likely AI. So, okay, we've evolved the system. We've aligned as a team. Now, the last part is leading. For this, systems teams have 4 great assets that they can do. And there are others, but at least on my team, these are the ones that we focus the most on. There's research briefs or design briefs. I call them research briefs, really. I think most people call them design briefs. But for me, a good design brief has a lot of research in it too. So this is a document that gives guidance. This is the explicit rules, along with some of the implicit rules of how you write the document. This is when to build a chatbot, when to build an AI enhanced feature, the questions you should ask yourself. This is the guidance behind the components. You have your Figma starters. This is the components. This is what you can choose from. This is more traditional design systems. You have your engineering documents, again, more traditional, but those components that are included in these documents have the guidance in the research or the design brief to be able to guide teams. So yes, there's that initial cost that we saw in the beginning because they're going to have to read that document to help decide what they're going to build. But if they do it correctly, they'll be able to go to these Figma and these engineering documents, and they're going to be able to accelerate how they build. And then the last one, and it's amazing because it's been one of the most profound most profound deliverables that I've been able to create from the research side, is really just starting giant threads. When anybody and everybody that's building a component, I've seen it the best with what we have latency, the example I gave of how the system talks back to you. That thread has like 60 people because everybody's building latency experiences right now. And so to get them all to talk to each other and say, this is how we're interpreting the guidance. This is how we're using these components. It's a shared community, and it builds a lot of that actual community aspect around each set of components so people can accelerate their delivery of a well-built product. So just 2 weeks ago, I was in a call, and right now one of the pattern I'm focusing on the most is handoffs. Handoffs are, imagine you're in Copilot chat, you wanted to start to draft an email, And so you can draft that email in Copilot, but at some point you go, now I want it to be in Outlook. It needs to hand that context off to Outlook. So it has that draft. It knows who you should be sending that email to. That's a handoff. If I'm working on a page, it's a draft document with a collection of thoughts, and I want to have it in Word now so I can polish it. That's a handoff. You're handing the document off. And I'm in a call, and there was a team member from Outlook or from Office AI. There was a team member from another team, and each of them were talking about their specific groups. Well, I need a handoff here. I'm thinking about building handoffs here. I'm thinking about building handoffs here. And then I said, well, wait, guys, who is thinking about this from the holistic point? And they kind of looked at each other. And then a PM said, I think that's the role of the design system team. And I was like, yes, it is. And that was, in its own right, a huge success because now we are leading. We are leading. We are being the ones that are being asked to build the strategic documents that is at the top. So the third takeaway here is that design systems, they used to be libraries of components. And now I believe they're compasses. They are the ones that will guide you to where the team is going. And if done right, they have that power in them. So we've talked about three main things here. We've talked about the importance of evolving from a design system to an interaction system. That is what's going to give your team the ability to meet the moment and effectively build AI at scale into your product. We've talked about aligning. And I think a workshop is a great way to do that. There's many ways to do it, though. The whole point is to really decide on a collection of questions that systems can answer and become a strategic leader for that. And then you need to deliver. And that is leading. And you lead by deliverables. You lead by creating the collateral that even if a design system member isn't in that call, there is documents out there that teams can go for when they need guidance. Because if you do that correctly, you will begin to be known as the person that has the guidance, and that in its own right makes you a leader. So I'll leave you with this. As I ask you, or I ask that you all ask yourselves, what are the biggest recurring challenges we see our teams face when implementing AI? That right there can be the guiding light for that workshop that you do. I thank you all. This is my book, Bridging Intention Impact. I have a newsletter that I'm really excited about because I've been wanting to build a newsletter about just product development as a whole. So that is the QR code to sign up for it. It comes out every Wednesday. And I thank you all for your time.
Thank you. We'll leave that up on the screen just for one more second. Thank you very much, Connor. Appreciate it. What an interesting story of your journey beyond just the work. Earlier today, we talked about how AI empowers people in different roles, user research, design, product, and how the lines are going to start getting blurry. Do you see that at all being your case here, or is it just a question of the project at hand?
I see it holistically, definitely. I see it with, I think that already as a researcher, I've played a product role. I've played a designer role. So I think even before AI, that was true. I think it has been accelerated purely because there are a lot of efficiencies to be gained. I used to spend a good amount of time writing outreach communications and writing other forms of content just to get the research started. All of that is automated now. A lot of the tools I use for analysis and other pieces like that, I still play a role, but I spend about 50% of the time that I do it. And so it's equipping me to do more product roles or product tasks, we'll say, like creating that Slack channel or Teams channel, excuse me, and doing things like that may have previously been the role of a PM, but I can handle that now and I can bleed into that area. So yes, I think that it's happening, and I think it's going to continue to in all reality.
That connects with the question I actually want to ask. Do you have any anecdotes from your own use of AI as a productivity tool during this process that would probably surprise people? Because I think one of the things you talk about the first half of that workshop being about empathy. That's been a lot of the theme today. People kind of just getting out their worries by sharing. So maybe there's something there you'd like to share.
Really, from this specific workshop, the best use was anytime that you're building content now, I think it's a great question to ask yourself, how am I going to be able to utilize AI in the development of this content? So I remember I took the conversations, I took documents, and I built an agent and asked it, what are the biggest questions from all of the suite of PowerPoints and, again, Teams channels and things like that? What are the questions that the highest order questions that this team is facing? And that helped influence the development of the question list that I had. So instead of going into that workshop and just saying, hey, design system team, tell me all the questions you've heard, I was able to come in and say, here's a list of 15 questions. Let's triage these and add more. And it was great. There was a couple people who did really take it, and they added a lot of theirs. And then I came in still with the 15 that I had built from my experience and through the use of AI. Yeah.
Before we get to the audience questions, I got to ask this one. Is voice UI the holy grail? Is that where we're headed?
That's
all the system's going to be gone someday. It's going to be like the old days. You just talk to somebody who does what you're bidding.
This is my theory on it. And I've only spent, I was here since Thursday in Berlin. But I know where I live, and I know in most cities in America that I visit, I have still not seen people walking around talking to themselves on their AirPods, on their headphones. I actually do a decent amount, and I generally feel like people look at me like, is he crazy or does he have AirPods in? And so until we either as a society change, where it's very normal to just have conversations with yourself because people recognize that you're talking to an AI system, I don't know how we're going to do that shift, right? Because we are still, like if you're sitting on a subway, you have to have some sort of interface because you're not ready to talk to yourself in that public environment. So it's going to take a cultural shift before it becomes an actual UI shift, I would imagine.
Interesting. Yeah, I remember the first time I got an Apple Watch, and I thought, this is so cool, I could talk to my watch, until I did that in front of other people. And they were like, what is wrong with you? I like this one because I like these questions that kind of bring us back down to the reality, not working at Microsoft. Do you think a company can build a good design system without a team dedicated to this? And I'd love for you to focus on your point about how the AI tools empower you nowadays.
I mean, I'll give you my take, but I also want to say I'm not a design systems designer. So I'm not the most equipped to say this. I'm a researcher, so I'm coming from this from a third-party perspective. I think it is possible to build a set of rules that people can follow. There is a lot of startups that have great cultures that are developed before they have an HR department or before they have a team dedicated to just developing culture, because the leaders live the cultural norms and live the cultural rules that then they ultimately embody in a set of actual standards. So I think that same thing could be true here, that if you have design principles and you have design rules, again, if you create those implicit rules, I think that's really important by how you act and how you treat the team of how the team is able to work, that if you are able to construct an environment where they are following certain standards because of just the culture or because of the norms around it, yes, but you need somebody to update an actual library. Okay. And the team that I work with, they're a significantly sized team, and I know that other main companies like Google, Salesforce, they all have full design systems teams. So is it possible to create what is like a design system? Absolutely. It could literally be a Google Doc with some principles that people follow, and that could be a design system. But to actually have a proper Figma-based library with components that are being updated to hold standards and keep uniformity across a product, you could do that, but it's gonna, someone has to do that work. So, it's gonna be part-time or whatever that might be.
We have another one that's similar to the cold start problem that I asked Michaela a moment ago. So love how you are shifting what a design system documents and bring documentation into place where people will see them. What were the most pivotal steps to initiate this strategic shift?
That's a good question. I think, I don't want to take more credit than I should. I do think having research, since I am not actually a part of the design system, I am a part of the research system team. So having me be there to then, because Fluent's not my only stakeholder. I have stakeholders across the Copilot system. So I've been sitting in Office AI as another team, and I'll work with Office AI, and when they encounter a problem, I'll be like, well, why don't we bring in Fluent? And I think that Fluent themselves do that, and they're a much bigger team, so they probably do it better than I do. But I think that in its own right is honestly just reminding people, because again, the narrow tunnel vision, you have 2 months to build this feature. It's a net new feature. You're adding AI to it. You have your engineers that are saying, okay, we're ready. Like we have 2 months. That means we need to start right now. And so people just make decisions. In those calls, sometimes I'll watch people make decisions, and I'm like, that's a huge decision you just made, and you seem like you thought about it for 10 seconds. So it's really important to have people in the call that can say, hey, remember, there's guidance that exists. And that, whether it's a design system, whatever that ultimately is, to just point them to be like, remember, we don't have to make this decision today, or we don't have to make this decision with just the information in this call. We can expand out because there's probably resources out there that exist, but you got to make sure people know that, and then that just comes down to like a knowledge sort of thing. So get it out, get it public, get it wherever you can. It kind of falls back to everything else in the information environment that we live.
There was another question that disappeared, but I believe they were asking as a more process question. A lot of people are just kind of sharing, coming out of the closet a little bit, how they're using AI. Did you use AI in the design of any of the actual components?
Did I use AI in the actual design? I didn't
of the system itself, not you, but the team.
That's a good question. Honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
I would love to. Now I have a question to go back and ask the team.
And you can follow up later.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate Connor taking all these questions.
Yeah. Thank you all. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks.
Yeah.